Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia show. Today I've got special guests here from Showtime College Football. I got Chase Davidson and Chase Snedden. I'm just going to call them by their last names, Snedden and Davidson, and they're okay with that. I appreciate everybody watching today. And this was kind of a weird invite because I'm trying to introduce and give a leg up to a lot of up-and-comers. And I really believe in this Showtime College Football podcast. And I want to give them some props. And I think what we can talk today about is college football. We'll talk Oregon, we'll talk BYU, we'll talk realignment, and just sort of see where that goes. Really quick, I want to give a shout outs to our first two posters. I'll go with three posters today. BR was the first to post. He says we need to start with the first one like Monty does. I'm okay with saying Monty started this. So BR, you get the very first post. You win the prize. Dallas came in second, and I want to recognize him. And then C. Kaufman, who finally arrived under the gun. I appreciate having him here too. So please go to KuConnect and sign up for the BYU NIL. You can do $10. You can get inside information. And all BYU fans need to be going and doing the NIL for BYU. And KuConnect's the one that I've partnered with. Take your phone, scan in the QR code up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen on YouTube or however you're watching, and go and sign up. And please donate because we need to build up BYU's NIL. All right, enough about me. Chase Davidson, I'm going to let you go first. Tell us about what you guys are and what Showtime is.
Yeah, so we're two college students that live here in Utah. We absolutely love talking college football. That's the basis of our friendship is college football. And we finally broke down a few weeks ago and decided, you know what? Let's do it. Let's make a college football podcast. And so we just have a fun, casual, chill, low-key podcast. As of right now, we're streaming on Apple Podcasts and Spotify with YouTube soon to come. But we just do it because we love it. We're having so much fun. I'm excited to film every single time. We don't really take much notes. We kind of just say, well, let's talk about the SEC today, maybe pull up the schedules and just hit record. And we're pretty unscripted. So we just like to have fun, have some laughs, and talk some casual college football.
Jay Snedden, what do you want to add to that?
He said it really well, honestly. Like, we met in like 7th grade, and then like we both realized how much we love sports, especially college football. And so like since then, we've just been talking about it like every day, to where it's just like he said, like almost like a keystone to our friendship. And yeah, we honestly just want like raw college football conversations. Like we want stats throughout our podcast. We also just kind of just want to talk about, as a fan, what we personally think, not just rely heavily on stats like a lot of analysts sometimes do. We want it to just be kind of fun for everyone and like bring in the fan side of college football.
Yeah, and we try and stay unbiased as possible, but also have a little bit of spice in there. Include our opinions, but stay unbiased when it comes to predictions and how we see football games. That we consider that one of our things that makes us a fun podcast to listen to. As I grew up a devout, loyal BYU fan, and my buddy Chase grew up a devout, loyal Oregon Ducks fan. And so we love the discussion. We love the talk of college football, unbiased and biased, having fun discussions, their opinions. So, yeah.
So let's talk Oregon and BYU. First, we'll start with Oregon. Chase Snedden. You guys are in a weird spot right now, right? Big 10, Big 12 stay in a dying Pac-12. What's your opinion on that?
It's honestly kind of tough for me because growing up an Oregon fan, like you just learn to love the Pac-12 because outside the West Coast, you really don't get a lot of respect, I feel like. But when UCLA left last summer, I was like super shocked by it because those two are kind of, I'd say we've talked about it in our podcast, I'd say probably two of the top 5 in most sports, to where that was kind of crazy. Me personally, I'd love for Oregon and Washington to follow them to the Big Ten, just because Washington, I feel, is our other main rival. I'd love Utah to join too, but I feel Utah would benefit more from joining the Big 12 with BYU, just because you'd have that rivalry back.
Right.
It's kind of sad because I feel the Pac-12 is kind of coming to a close before it maybe becomes almost just like a little bit better American conference or just not really even existence anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and I think, especially on my shows, I grew up in Washington State. I'm a Pac-12 born and bred, but at the same time, I'm BYU. So I always had that conflict from cheering from UW and Wazoo, and cheering from BYU. It used to be all equal, but it's not now, is it? Now everything is disparate. Now you have the SEC and Big Ten, and then everybody else in a lot of ways. And I appreciate what you said about Utah going to the Big 12, though. I personally think that that's where they belong. They can always go to the Big Ten later. But what would happen if you didn't get an offer? Do you stay in the Pac-12, or do you possibly take a lot more money to stay in to move to the Big 12?
It's tough to say. It really depends who I feel the Pac-12 can add to the conference. Because losing those two teams in USC and UCLA, it's kind of hard to replace, especially USC. They have such a rich history of football, and UCLA has basketball. And then San Diego State saying they want to leave the Mountain West. I feel basketball, they bring a lot to the table, but football-wise, I just feel they can't really compare to the two. To where personally, I'd rather us join the Big 12 just because we'd have that competition with Baylor, TCU,
Right.
Utah, maybe Colorado and the Arizonas, depending on what they do too. To where I just feel for Oregon's benefit, it's better for them to join a conference that's kind of building up right now as we speak.
Man, that's fantastic to hear from an Oregon fan, because I've always thought that would be a great idea. I don't know, Washington and Oregon think themselves pretty proud, right? So for them to say they're going to step down to a truck stop conference, that all nonsense. I think it would actually help them, and they wouldn't even have to stay for 5-6 years. At the end of the day, if they got an invite for 5-6 years in the Big Ten, they could still pay their exit, just like OU did and Texas did, and they're going to make $1 billion over 10 years if they do that more. So, yeah, I don't know why they just don't jump ship instead of talking about bringing in Tulane, SDSU, SMU. Anyway, I really appreciate your opinion. Now, Chase Davidson, tell me about BYU and the Big 12.
I mean, I could be more excited. I was actually serving my LDS mission when I found out that BYU would be joining the Big 12 that same weekend that, of course, Utah finally lost to BYU. Was while I was gone. I was unable to watch that game, which hurt very badly. But I'm so excited to be here for when we join the Big 12 in T-minus 9 days.
Right.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I am so excited to be finally, BYU is finally a Power 5. Feels great. I'm so excited for football and basketball. I can't wait. I don't miss any games, really. It's my joy just going to BYU football and BYU basketball games. So, I mean, and I'm in that umbrella of BYU fans where I am totally fine having, not achieving, immediate success. I'm patient. I'm fine with us building in those conferences, as our recruiting is obviously going to jump up a whole nother level for all sports, And so I'm under the impression that if we can get 6 wins, that's my opinion. 6 wins for BYU is going to be an outstanding season. 7 or 8, bring it on. Even 5 to 6, depends on what those wins are. But if we can win a few games in the Big 12, I'll be pretty satisfied. I'm just excited for a Big 12 environment at LaVell Edwards. So I can't wait. So,
do you have tickets to the Cincinnati game?
Yes, I do.
All right. You're going to have to give me one of them, because I didn't get, because I'm not a student. I didn't get tickets to that game. It's all sold out, of course. And season tickets went out like that. So I'm going to have to try to find somebody that has a ticket that I can go. But that game's going to be amazing, and they're not going to lose to Cincinnati. If there's any game they're going to win this year, it's going to be that Cincinnati game.
That should be the game that we have 100%. If we lose that game, then I'm going to be pretty scared for the rest of the season. But I'm finally glad that BYU. Also, another great thing is that BYU finally has a normal schedule.
Right.
We finally don't have a heavy loaded front of our schedule, front half.
10 P5s this year.
Yeah.
That used to be like 3 seasons worth of P5s.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Right? Yeah.
So it's a big step for BYU. Big step.
So I'm going to go to a couple comments here. First of all, we got Glenn Luman joining us from the Philippines. That is fantastic, Glenn. I appreciate you watching, and that's the beauty of YouTube. So this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about, is how quick do you think you can move to a more not easily accessible, but maybe more accepted viewing for people on YouTube versus doing your podcast?
Yeah, we've actually just been talking about this week because we've had, as the podcast grows, every single time we post a new podcast, we're 5 episodes in now. Every single time on our Instagram page, on our Twitter, we're getting more requests to do YouTube. I think we've gotten about 10 to 15 of those total to move to YouTube. And it does add more work for us, but we're probably in the next few shows, next few weeks, I'd say by 2 weeks from now, we'll probably be moving to YouTube, adding video, as we just started kind of just recording ourselves, didn't really plan on going big. So now
Right.
we'll kind of have to restructure. I don't know if you have anything else, Chase, but
Yeah, I mean, we legit talked about it like last night. We were texting about it,
Okay.
and we mainly just kind of wanted to just build a following and see how fast we can with what we have already. And we've kind of, like we've talked about, kind of already gotten a lot of requests for it, to where it's something we definitely want to do. Like you said, it will be a lot more effort and just like the clipping or like posting, you know,
Right.
part of the process, which a lot of time goes into, but it's something we definitely want to do. It's like both of us are super passionate about it right now, to where we kind of just want to ride it and see where it goes.
Well, I really appreciate you guys' show. I think you have a lot of upside. You know, I've told you I'll help you. Whatever I can do to give you guys a leg up. Just so you know, there's a lot of people out there that want to help. As long as you basically ask them. Most people are afraid to even ask the question, and you guys haven't been that, and I really respect that. So I'm gonna. How much time do you guys have with me? Because I was gonna have you answer some questions live, if you guys are okay with doing that. All right, so I'm gonna put the invite link out. If you want to join the show, you can ask some questions to these new guys, and I really want to see kind of what you guys' questions are for how they can improve their offering. Any advice I'm sure they take, and at the same time we'll answer questions. While I'm waiting for somebody to click on that join link, I just put in comments. Make sure you're subscribing, hit follow on Twitter, follow these guys on Instagram and Twitter, and follow College Football CFB pod. Let's talk about one thing while I'm waiting for people to accept that invite link. By the way, a few people want to shout out to Aztec Country, hey, and we already said hi to Glenn, and now Patrick from Baylor's here. Hey, Patrick, what's up, man? So I just wanted to show you guys this article that I found today and repeated. It's basically this comment from John Canzano, which he did in March, and basically he said the media deal doesn't have to come before before they do an invite for new members. What do you guys think about that?
Chase, you can go first. Do you like?
So it's saying there like doesn't need to be a media invite before or after new members come in.
Yeah, he's saying new members can come in before the media deal.
I mean, yeah, I think especially with San Diego State, it's kind of like the first major thing that's happened, because there's just been a lot of speculation kind of what's going on.
Right.
It's like USC, UCLA left, Texas, Oklahoma, then all the teams joined the Big 12. And since then, everyone's kind of just been like, oh, this is going to happen, this conference will do this. To where I feel this is kind of like the big first thing to happen since then, because a lot of people think they'll join the Pac-12. But I mean, if they're going to sign a media deal, I don't really think it matters if new teams join after, because obviously they want to be in the Pac-12 for a reason, no matter what it is. Like, they want to be in it right now without the media deal currently, to where I think either way works.
All right, yeah. That's awesome. Did you want to add something, Chase? I'm sorry.
No, I was actually going to say, I would say the exact same thing. I think I'm very excited the fact that something happened. It felt like it had been kind of at rest for a while before the San Diego State stuff came out. So I'm excited for just some dominoes to start falling.
Right.
Yeah.
Realignment is sapping the life out of a lot of people, I think.
Yes.
All right, Kaufman, one of my loyal viewers. What do you got for these guys today?
Well, not much, but it sounds like I'm going to have to go check out your guys' podcast, because it sounds very interesting. Because luckily I have Apple, so. But no, it was interesting listening to what I'm not sure how to say your last name. Snedden?
Yes.
You're all good, Oregon. Don't worry. Yeah, well, sorry, I'm just not very good with names. Never have been. But anyway, it was interesting what you had to say about Oregon. So, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I grew up in the Big 12, and just so you know, Davison, basketball runs through Lawrence in the Big 12. So good luck with that. But, I just don't. I think Oregon's going to end up in the Big 10 before they ever end up in the Big 12, to be honest with you. I think CBS and NBC want more teams out there because they have those later games, and I think they're willing to pay for Oregon and Washington to jump to the Big 10 right away.
No, I completely agree. I think if Oregon and Washington are to join a conference, I think it will be the Big 10 first. Even if they have to stay in the Pac-12 a couple years, if it's like a smaller conference, I think the Big 10 is definitely the destination they want to end up in. So I think you're right. I think it will end up there. But as a fan, like if we had to join the Big 12 first, I'd be up for it. But personally, for me, I'd rather the Big 10.
Yeah, and I can understand that. And it's just one of those things. And this thing with San Diego State's just a mess, in my opinion, because it's just kind of nuts what they did. But in the same token, if the Pac-12 can add them before they get a media deal, which it kind of makes me hard to believe that, unless whoever they've got their media rights through have already approved it.
Right, that would be the one exception.
Yeah. That's the one exception I have to that. But what the Pac-12 media days is basically a month away for football.
Yeah, it's on the 21st.
It's coming up.
21st. Yeah.
So a month away, and if they don't have a media deal by then, that's going to be very, very interesting media days.
It'll be horrible for the Pac-12. It'll be a disaster because this is the best season the Pac-12 is going to have probably in the last decade. They got
Definitely.
6 or 7 teams that all could challenge for that championship game at the end of the year. And if they have the media deal sucking the life away from the season, it'll be a disaster for the league. So something has to happen.
Well, and the other thing is, in my opinion, if they don't have a media deal before the season starts, you're going to see teams moving. Because here at the end of July, I think end of July, beginning of August, sometime like that is when they start building their budgets for the following years. Well, if they don't have a contract, how can they start building budgets for the 2024 season?
Right.
Yeah.
So in Colorado, with all the hype around Prime, I think that's one reason why there's so much smoke around them, because they're talking about, they don't want to lose this deal with Deion Sanders, all this hype, and then they go out and have only win one game next year.
Right.
So
yeah,
no,
it's on a timer for sure.
Oh yeah, it's definitely on a timer. So, but no, I just want to say congratulations to you two on your podcast, and I definitely will check it out. It sounds like something that I'd be very interested in listening to, and the fact that you guys try to keep your bias out of it and just have fun with it. And that's what I like to listen to about sports. I like people who are just honest and give their opinions and don't try to put their own spin on things.
Exactly.
So that's one reason why I follow Big 12 Mafia. He just tells it how he sees it.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, what do you guys think about that? He had some good comments there.
He did. I'm not super well versed in how the media works with college football. Just being, I don't know exactly how the Big Ten's media deals currently are set up, how to interact with Oregon and Washington. I'm not quite as well versed in that. However, I do agree that timer is specifically important for Colorado with Deion Sanders, as Colorado's got to make something out of this major season. They have so much hype around their viewership is going to be, no matter what, is going to be sky high for Colorado. So
if Colorado wins 2 games this year, it'll be a disaster.
Yeah.
It'll be bad.
But I don't even think it's just Colorado, because like you said, there's definitely 5 teams we've talked about at the top of the Pac-12.
5,
And I'd say this is probably the most excited college football fans have been for the Pac-12 for that reason, because you have so many elite QBs. I think also is a big part of it, to where I think something needs to happen, or else, it'll just be a disaster for the Pac-12 conference this season.
Completely agree. Okay, guys, I've been trying to do this for 3 months. I got an Aztec on my show.
Nice.
They're kind of like the chupacabra. Trying to catch them in the daytime's impossible. So the fact that we got this one while the sun's still up, I really appreciate. Aztec Country, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for finally joining my show.
Yeah, I appreciate your show a lot. You do a great job.
Oh, well, thank you. So I have tried to be as positive for SDSU as possible. I've wanted you guys to, from months back, join the Big 12. I had hoped that would just happen, like overnight I'd wake up and it was done. Now that we've had this sort of snafu with leaving, not leaving, then leaving again, tell us how you're feeling. Tell us what Aztec Nation is saying.
Yeah, we're not really sure, we got a new president. When I was there, we had Elliot Richmond and Dylan Torres.
Aztec, are you on speakerphone? Because we can't hear you.
Hold on, can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so when I was there, we had a different president. I don't know, we're not really sure. We're feeling pretty insecure about what's going on, but I don't think we're cocky in the sense that, the Mountain West doesn't really serve our needs. I think we need to make a jump to the Power 5. We have about 9 days left. I don't know if we can make it as an independent either, so I guess we're just hoping that the Pac-12 adds us without a media deal, or the Big 12 comes and swoops in. It's my personal preference that we get the Big 12 because they're a lot more stable. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with that, honestly, because for San Diego State to join the Pac-12 right now, because honestly, the Pac-12, I think most people would probably agree that it's probably coming to an end. And with the Big 12, especially with BYU there and TCU, you kind of have the old Mountain West kind of rivalries in there, especially if Utah joins later on, to where I feel the Big 12 would be a perfect fit for San Diego State, mainly just because they'd have a more secure future. And like you said, the Mountain West in most sports doesn't really give you guys competition except maybe Boise State or Utah State a few years here and there, to where
Right.
I think I understand you guys definitely want something within the next 9 days, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think San Diego State is the first thing that came to my head when San Diego State came up on the news. It said leaving the Mountain West. I said, well, I think San Diego State right now is probably the most qualified Group of 5 team to do so. That's the first thing that came to my mind. So I feel confident. I still feel very hopeful for San Diego State that you guys will get some deal that will be better for your future as of right now. So that's how I'm feeling. I think San Diego State's very qualified to join a Power 5, especially with obviously the success in March Madness definitely helps, but always consistently good in football and basketball is definitely not going to hurt.
I guess especially this last season of March Madness will definitely help you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys proved why you guys deserve it. I mean, you beat down on Bama, the number 1 team, who everyone had the favorite, to where, if anything, you guys deserve it more, like you said, than any other non-Power 5.
So
Yeah, thanks for the accolades. We've kind of slowly built up our basketball program. We're a lot more passionate about basketball. I was a Charger fan when the Chargers left, but it's been a blessing in disguise because we've gotten our own stadium. But we beat Kansas in 2014 at the Allen House, and we're welcome to play any basketball school. I just think that no one wants to play us anymore because we're pretty good.
So what do you think about the idea that if it all falls apart and the Pac-12 doesn't fulfill, which I think I'm almost 100% positive is a handshake deal to join the Pac-12, if that doesn't happen, what do you think about the idea of not going back to the Mountain West, but putting something together with some Mountain West teams and trying to do something with the AAC?
Yeah, the AAC is a pretty solid conference too. With they don't have Cincinnati or Houston or UCF, but they have like Tulane and some of those other schools that are pretty good at basketball. So I think that's a good landing spot. We could always join in 2025 without penalty.
Yep.
Paying that $34 million. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think what they should do is just leave and pay the $17 million right now, and then just see what happens. It'd be a good gamble.
Well, it's sort of one of those things where you either put all your chips on one number, you're betting red or black, and you're either going to win or you're not. But if you don't take that chance, you'll never know, right? It's like the shot that's never made is the shot that's never taken. So I think you guys are brave to be able to do what you want to do, and I think you're deserving of it. At the same time, the lack of planning seems kind of chaotic, and it's not a good look. So I wish SDSU was in a, San Diego State deserves to be P5. They've played at a high level in basketball and football. It's just a matter of, can they catch that ride?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Hey, we have a rivalry with you guys, BYU. I know you guys don't consider us rivals, but if we were to join the Big 12, what would you think our trophy would be?
Oh,
well, for one thing, I do think BYU has a rivalry with San Diego.
I would agree. I agree.
Yeah. I'm not a BYU fan, and I'd agree with that because, like, during the Jimmer and like Kawhi Leonard days,
exactly.
I would always go to those basketball games. Those were so entertaining. So
absolutely, yeah. I think it is something that we could look. I've been pushing for SDSU. Why do I keep saying that? San Diego State, I've been pushing for since your name was even floated to possibly join the Big 12, because I want to play November games in San Diego, right? I want to go on vacation to San Diego, and a football game gives me an excuse. So I think it would be great. Now, whether it actually happens or not, I don't know, unfortunately. I wish it was more certain.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely hook you guys up with some great food out here.
All right, that sounds fantastic. I'll have to remember that. Hey, thanks for joining, Aztec. I really appreciate it. You've been following for a while, and I really appreciate you participating. And feel free to come back anytime, because as of right now, I don't have anybody who wants to come on my show.
All right, thank you. Cheers.
Okay, cheers. We'll talk to you later. All right, let's see. I'm going to put the link again since nobody else has joined, see if anybody wants to join in the next few minutes. What do you guys want to tell the people who are watching right now? Where do you want to be? This is the parent in me. Where do you guys want to be in 5 years?
5 years. And do you mean with the podcast or just us personally?
No, I don't care if you get married or not. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'm only talking about your show, man.
Okay. I think in 5 years, as of right now, our trajectory has kind of set up, even in the last week or two, that with our presence on Instagram, we're starting to build pretty fast. We gained about 400 followers in about a week and a half on Instagram.
Oh,
and
that's
now
great.
We're up past climbing through 1,000. And we're starting to play with some of the big boys on Instagram, starting to get collaborations with some big accounts. And we think there's definitely a future there. And that, of course, is building the podcast as our main structure. And so, I mean, my 10-year plan, I think it's Chase's as well. I mean, maybe it's a 20-year plan, maybe it's a 30-year plan, but my goal is to have me and Chase on College Game Day as guest pickers. That's our goal. One day.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. And how about you, Chase Stedden?
Yeah, honestly, we've joked about it like our whole life. Like, imagine if we made it on like College Game Day, but like it'd be like something super awesome if like they noticed us somehow and then had us come on if they were here for like a BYU Utah game or whatever. But yeah, like he said, the Instagram, we also just want to be kind of just a college football news page along with our podcast. So we've just been posting, just like schedules or just like the San Diego State breaking news, along with our clips of our podcast, where you also just want to be in an informative page for those who love college football, to where through that we've seen a lot of growth, like Davidson said.
Yeah, growing a community is definitely the goal, because one thing that several times, almost every single college football season, I always am watching games. And of course, I'm talking to Chase. Even if we're not together, we're usually texting, watching the games together, like just going crazy. But I've always had this like desire, like I've got to tell somebody about this, because my family loves BYU, but not as much just college football in general. We're big BYU fans, don't miss any games, watch all the games, but I just want to like share all of these insights that I love reading about. And so building a community is definitely one of the goals, where, you can just, start on Twitter, start on Instagram, and just be able to talk college football with people, get these awesome opinions. And it's already starting, and it is so fun. So that's the goal, is to keep on growing that, become a podcast that can, eventually rival with some of the bigger college football podcasts online right now. And yeah,
I think, and we'll talk about this after the show, about hints and tricks and things we can do to help boost it. But one thing that we've started is Your College Sports Connection. And we're basically doing, just like you and I, or me and you both, with other people across the country, and we're just getting together and promoting each other's shows. There's no written contract, there's no tied to a locked on or anything like that. It's just guys all wanting positive for each other and promoting the show. And the stronger you get, the stronger you build those connections, the more people trust you and the more they'll want to be entertained with your content. So where I'm going to go, let's see, we've gone a half hour, and I want to go 10 more minutes. So any more questions we got from the group, you can join the show. I put the link in there a couple times. Please give them to us. Otherwise, I've got questions for you guys. So where do you see, both of you, where do you see Oregon in 5 years? I don't care which one of you says it.
You're the Oregon fan, Chase. You can go first.
Personally, I see us in the Big Ten because I feel that's the destination both Oregon and Washington want the most. So I see us in the Big Ten.
Okay. And Chase Davidson?
I mean, I definitely see that as more of a possibility. For some reason, it's one of those things where I don't exactly – I'm like you. I'm open to Oregon going to the Big 12. I mean, why not? I'm also open – I think it'd be cool if Oregon and Washington did a little bit of a bounce. They took a truck stop in Big 12 and then left to the Big 10 later, which I think most Big 12 fans would be completely fine with.
Right.
And I see Oregon and Washington, secondary to Pac-12. I see them more as a Big 10 team. Along with USC and UCLA. I think it just fits better. I don't really know why that is, but it just seems like it's a better fit for them. So
I think my personal opinion is that they would be best served leaving the Pac-12, just letting the Pac-12 die, is my opinion. Letting the Pac-12 die, because once they left it would be over. Join the Big 12, stay there long enough until the next media deal, which is 31. And then if they're through that 5 or 6 years, now the Big 12 can negotiate a higher number because they've been in the league, and they can then bounce to the Big 10. So that would be my dream scenario. But where I think they're going to be, and I made this prediction 3 weeks ago, I think they're all chicken. None of them want to make a tactical mistake. And so I think the Pac-12 survives. I think they pick up San Diego State. They don't pick up SDSU. I think that's a reach. And they survive for about 3 or 4 more years, and then I think it's over. That's when Washington and Oregon will go. The ACC will blow up, and now we'll go from 5 conferences to 3.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I've seen some concepts of. I mean, I don't know exactly the logistics of all of this, but I mean, you see all these teams breaking off in the Pac-12, on a next few years scale, and you see kind of a new American / maybe it's a newer Mountain West that forms with these kind of scraps from this expansion. And so maybe that's definitely a possibility. I think if no one wants to act, that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, and building on that, like the 3 conferences, it'll just be interesting to see what they do with conferences, because at that point, they'd just be getting so big. Where it'll be interesting to see if they kind of just disband them. You keep playing like your main rivals and then kind of play other, I guess, what are Power 5 now, and kind of just get rid of conferences. But it'll just be interesting to see what happens with all of it, because the ACC, the Big 10, and the Big 12, I feel will all kind of just become like 20 plus teams, to where it'll just be, I don't know, it's tough to say what will happen right now.
That's the thing, is it kind of becomes like, what is a conference and what's the purpose of a conference? Because they've always been set up, throughout all of history as more geographical and
regional. They were regional.
Regional, exactly. And now you can go.
No, it become almost like more like the NFL. You'd have like your divisions. Like, let's say like Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA are a division, but they'd like still play teams in their conference, like over on the East Coast, to where, I don't know, it'll be tough to say what exactly happens, because I feel we're headed in that direction where it's just gonna be like 20, 25, 30 teams in conferences. So
I think 25 and 30 is too much. I think the max they could do is 24, and then 3 times 24 is what, 72 teams. We're almost there. There's just a few teams missing to be at 72 teams. If you move a UConn up, you move a San Diego State up, you move maybe a Boise or an SMU up, or a Tulane, all of a sudden now you're at 72, and that's 3 conferences. You could break those down into groups where you could do, divisions and those type of things. I think it could work, but there's too many teams to disenfranchise half of college football. There's no way a P2 happens, at least not in the next 20 years. There's lawsuits and antitrust issues. That would never happen. James Hester, one of my very valuable watchers, I appreciate him being here today. He asked about Oregon State and Washington State. I'll answer mine first. I want them in one of these Power 5 leagues. I would prefer they were in the Big 12. I don't really care. I know the passion that's at Oregon State and Washington State because I grew up in that area, so I want them in. I don't know what's going to happen, though, if Pac-12 dissolves and there's no plan for the after effect. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated because I feel like, and it's not like it's really anyone's fault, but I feel like those guys are getting left out of the conversation when there's still, big football programs that care about football, or still big athletic programs that care about their sports.
Right.
Especially, Oregon State was top 15 this year. So, and Washington State is consistently a solid team, heads to bowl games fairly consistently. They have a rowdy fan base that I love Washington State. And so you feel bad that these guys are kind of falling out of the conversation. And I think it's important to talk about where they would go. You have Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State that are kind of just not really in much of these talks.
Right.
And I think it's important that they're talked about because I don't see them making a massive deal to go to the Big Ten because the Big Ten's kind of closed off a little bit for right now.
Yeah.
And so you wonder if they'd be part of one of these smaller conferences that builds up or if they could somehow snag a deal to a bigger Big 12. It all depends on what happens in the future and how big these conferences get, like we were talking about with 72 teams. And so it's really, I honestly don't know enough to be able to say a prediction for those two, but I'd say I think they are viable enough to be in the conversation. I think they should be in the conversation.
Agreed. Chase Nedden?
Yeah, I honestly I completely agree with that. Oregon State, they beat Oregon last year. Washington State, we came back and beat them.
Yep.
Washington State, Pullman, I hate when we play in Pullman. It's like always a stressful game because it's so tough to play there. But I think
for one thing, it's a long bus ride from Spokane.
Yeah.
So,
but it's like, I think it's tough because I feel Oregon and Washington have become the bigger rivalry between those four teams. Because the past decade, Washington, I feel, has kind of been, like the big brother of Washington State. Same with Oregon and Oregon State.
Yeah.
To where I think they kind of get overlooked, especially because there's like talks of the Arizonas, Colorado, and then they want Utah as well to join the Big 12. And then Oregon, Washington joining the Big 10, to where, kind of like Chase said, those four other teams kind of just get left there. And it's like, well, what do we do with them? Right. But I wish they would join because Stanford, they had great football in the 2010s. Cal had great teams as well. And like all four of them are great athletic programs, to where I hope they find a way to join either the Big 12, Big 10, really whatever, because they deserve it as well.
They're programs that have been traditionally, maybe middling, but they're certainly not basement dwellers. And they've competed at times, gone to Rose Bowls and other things. So I think they both schools are awesome. The problem is the finances in the Pac-12 from top to bottom are the worst in college athletics. I have never seen some of these meetings, like Kurt Schultz meetings at Washington State, about their finances being so just crazily upside down. How does that happen? It happens because they were doing, you know what Enron was? I don't know. I'm dating myself. You guys heard of Enron? Enron was an energy company that was selling futures on energy consumption, primarily in Texas and California. So they were selling what basically was thin air. They were selling like Bitcoin. There was no intrinsic value to it, but people were guessing that as need went up, the price for energy would go up, and then you could do almost like trading, like the stock exchange. It turned out to be completely a shell game. It was all illegal. The company disappeared. It was at one time worth like $8 billion or some crazy number, and it disappeared overnight, and took a bunch of companies down with it. And that's kind of what these Pac-12 teams have been doing. They're taking their finances and they've been projecting out their gains. So they were projecting out that their media deals would be worth a lot more money, meaning they were writing checks that they didn't have money coming in yet. Crazy finances. Dang. So that's what's put them behind anyway. BR says, I personally think P4 would be ideal. I've heard that as well. For a neat playoff structure, certainly 4 teams of 20 or whatever, 4 teams of 16 would be very even. I just don't know how that happens once the ACC is gobbled up, the majority of teams, by the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10.
Yeah, I think I definitely like the idea. I'm in the trend where I think more conferences being spread out, kind of like how it's always been. I think more conferences is better. I don't really like the idea of having 2 power conferences or 3 power conferences, even though I might say that's where I think it's going. I still am leaning towards the idea that a P4 would be better to me than a P3 or P2, because I like how it's spread out regional. I like that idea. That's how college football's always been. But that's my opinion with a P4. I would like that better than a P3 or P2.
I'm the same way. I feel like you'll be able to set it up geographically better as well.
Right.
Because I feel like USC, like next season for the Big Ten, they're gonna have a crazy travel back and forth to where, I don't know, it's tough to say because teams like Oregon, Washington join as well. You have like the whole coast to coast at that point to where, I don't know, it's tough to say how they would split it up, but I hope they'd be able to split it up regionally so you can kind of keep your rivalries that you have.
I appreciate that. I think both of you guys' comments are exactly spot on, and we'll have to see where it goes. I posted the link if you want to join the show. We still got time if you want to join and talk to either one of the Chases. Ask them about their endeavor, or kind of we can talk more about what happened today with San Diego State and some of the projections for the Pac-12. Now I want to say hi to Devil Frog, who he's actually been my longest serving partner on Twitter. He and I joined up a long time ago and came up with the Mafia name, so shout out to him. And then Immaculate has joined. I appreciate Immaculate being here and you guys leaving your comments. If you want to join the show, I posted the link, guys. So let me get this comment out here from Devil Frog. He says, I'm behind on the show right now. He just joined. But I don't know if public schools from California are worth the trouble. Remember, their lawmakers placed the travel restrictions on athletic programs for partisan expediency, basically politics. What do you guys think about the politics in the Pac-12, specifically California?
Well, I think it showed itself very much in COVID. As you see, the Pac-12 I wasn't there for the entire COVID season. I left on my LDS mission midway through, so my knowledge kind of takes a dive. But from what I know, that the Pac-12 played, I believe, was it like 6 games each?
Yeah, it was 6 games there.
Each.
Right.
And you had other teams that were more flexible, that were more like, okay, we'll adapt to this, and still had a full season. Obviously, BYU was one of those, but even other conferences were able to adapt a little better. The Pac-12 seemed to kind of just give up for the season. And so I think that really showed out in 2020.
Yeah. No, I completely agree because 2020, Pac-12 was teams played 6 games, then the playoff Bama still had 10 wins on their resume to where, I don't know. I wish politics would stay out of sports for the most part, but, with state laws, it's kind of hard to do that because you can't control every state because of sports. So, but that's, that'd be my dream. I think that's everyone's dream. So, but yeah.
If players become employees, the world of college sports completely gets flipped on its head.
Yeah, it would be
we'll have to see where that goes. You guys, wanted to introduce you to Immaculate. This guy is one of the most well thought out and I think thoughtful contributors that I've come around. Immaculate, you came late to the show. These guys have their own Instagram and Twitter. In fact, let me bring that up so you can see what it is. It is Showtime College Football Pod. I'll just bring it up so you can see it. This is their Twitter page. I'm trying to get people to get active with them because I think they're really thoughtful and they have some good opinions. What do you got for us today?
Well, first off, how you doing, guys? It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate the kind words. I just kind of add in my 2 cents, and people think of it what they will. Sometimes I think it's great. Sometimes I think it's nuts. So it's one of those. But what are you guys focused on with your show? BYU focused or just all around sports?
We're mainly just college football in general. I think our only bias will be towards our favorite teams. I think that's something we can't get rid of. But overall, we just want to talk about.
Tell them what your teams
football.
are.
I'm an Oregon Ducks fan.
There you go.
Oh, interesting. Ducks. All right. You guys are in kind of the middle of all this right now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Case Davidson is who?
I'm a BYU fan from here in Utah. So we definitely are. The goal was not to be a team specific, was to be a wide audience college football podcast that is decently unbiased in terms of, obviously you can't just get rid of all bias. That doesn't make any sense. Also, it probably wouldn't be very fun to listen to. So we have our own opinions, but we don't let that get in the way of our projections or our predictions. We try and keep it a good medium. So
might be extra interesting if Oregon ends up in the Big 12.
Yeah. It was a fun last year. We played each other. We didn't really speak for a whole week last year in about September. So I was down in the darkness after we got like absolutely wrecked by Oregon. So and he was, having a great time. So he went to that game in person, and I was here all depressed. So it was fun for our friendship.
It's good times. It's kind of questionable where they might end up at this point in time. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, how much do you follow that as an Oregon Duck fan?
I follow it, especially since UCLA left. I've been following it pretty close. But kind of like we've talked about on the show, everything right now is kind of speculation. People think they know things, but they just kind of are assuming. Personally, I hope we join the Big Ten, but if that means we need to go to the Big 12 for a few years, I would love that, because Big 12, especially with the addition of all the new teams, I think they're all deserving of a big conference to where I'd love to play, Houston, BYU, TCU. I'd love to play all the teams down there to where I'm really good with whatever, as long as we join something and not stay in the dying Pac-12.
As a fan, it might almost be the better choice. As far as I know, you guys were talking earlier about how you wanted to see it hopefully not become like a P3.
Right.
Although I tend to believe that's exactly where it's going.
Yeah.
But in that regard, if that's what happens, if Oregon is with the Big 12, in terms of just competitiveness, that might actually be the better route to go.
Well, don't you think so? The value goes up for the Big 12. If they got Washington, Oregon, and Utah, and Arizona State, immediately the partners would, their value would go up 40, 45, maybe even $50 million a school.
Well, and basketball already runs through the Big 12 as of right now, in my opinion, the last few years, to where, especially adding Oregon, Washington, and Utah for football, that would just make the Big 12 even better than it already is, to where I think that'd be awesome as well.
Yeah, and even in the last 2 years, the Big Ten is a big name. They're kind of like, they're the second best conference, but at the same time, it's like, are they the second best conference? Because after your Big Three, last year was probably the worst showing of it. After your Big Three, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, I'd take most of the teams in the Big 12 over any of those teams in the Big 10. Maybe with Michigan State coming back a little bit, but other than that, I think the Big 12 overall is probably better than the Big 10, especially in the last 2 years, where it's been a pretty steep drop off after your hard hitters.
Yeah.
Maybe Wisconsin comes back, but we'll see how that works out. So I think the Big 12 is not much of a step down from the Big 10.
Mm-mm. It's a very deep conference in the Big 12. Like, every team has had great seasons the last decade. So,
Immaculate, I got a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So these guys are still in school, right? They're younger, and their take is a lot different than what we've been seeing in general on Twitter. It's a lot more moderate, especially this Oregon talk about possibly even countenancing the idea of being in the Big 12. Do you think that is something that the Pac-12 is fighting right now? They're fighting a battle within their own organizations about where they want to be?
Actually, I kind of go in the opposite direction. Some of their comments, like, we're more united than ever. Some people tend to think that's going towards the network contracts. Like, we're so united, we're going to stay together. I don't get that feeling at all. What I think when they mean by united is USC and UCLA pissed them off, and just kind of did them all dirty. And they are all at that point kind of feeling like a little victimized, and they're not going to do that to each other. So the united part, in my opinion, is reason why nothing happened is some of them aren't going to leave others behind without knowing they have a spot.
Right.
Weigh out their opinion, maybe. That's just my feeling on it, is that any schools that might have already been able to leave are kind of holding out to try to make sure that everyone gets a spot. And in terms of the P5 vote, that's not a bad thing either. So it's not like the networks are going to be mad about it. They're basically paying any P5 to go to the Big 12 for the same amount of money.
Right.
But in terms of going to the Big 12, that's the competitive conference, because like these guys are comparing it to the Big 12 as an Iowa guy. At times the Big 12 or the Big 10, sorry, isn't that competitive. But they basically can get competitive whenever they want to be, if that makes sense.
Right.
Whereas the Big 12 folks, that conference was supposed to get separated. That was the one that was supposed to get chewed up to make the P4.
Right.
The Pac is the one that screwed that up. For if anyone didn't know, they went against the plan because they didn't want to be left with the small schools. But the small schools of the Central Time Zone were best value to go in the Pac because it gave them Central Time Zone locations.
Exactly.
So they get the entire noon Eastern time slot. They were supposed to go along with that, and they blew that up by trying to get Texas and crew. That was I don't know if you ever heard about it, was the Pac ACC Big 10 scheduling alliance.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That was to schedule Texas and Oklahoma together during the season if they're in different conferences.
Yeah.
Because their game is at an exact date. So, but because of that, the point being is that the Big 12 has this survival mentality, and every school, it just kind of seems built into them now. So yeah, for like an Oregon to go there, while some might say that's below us, I'd say you come out of that, you win that, and you go into the national tournaments. I think you're pretty good. And even if that's only for 2 to 3, 4 years before maybe you then go to the Big 10, I think it's better than staying in the Pac.
I agree, but I just whether they're willing to, because they've dug in, they've done this to themselves. They put up these walls saying, truck stop conference and R1 and education this and all that. Their messaging for the last year has been never, ever, ever. But we're finding out now that the last number, I don't know if you heard about it, the last number that I saw was $22.5 million. Is that enough to keep the Pac-12 together? I find that hard to believe. There's a comment here from Sergeant Pickles, who's a UW guy. I know you know that. Perception is reality. Pac and Big 12 are both below the Big and SEC. Nobody's arguing that. But there is a third conference, room for a third conference in there. And if you want to call it best of the rest, fine. But you got a bunch of teams there that are going to be highly competitive. The Big and the SEC are both top heavy. So they're always going to be qualifying for that end of year tournament.
I think, like right now, everyone is looking at this from a perspective, a frame of mind that's very different than what we're going to have in the future. What's thought of as being a bad situation, you're below the Big 10 and the SEC. When we get to the P3, basically,
right?
I'm of the opinion that the tournament's actually going to be made a lot smaller. It's,
smaller than 12?
Yeah. Probably go to 6, and then they're going to have conference tournaments that lead into that. They're just because the presidents got involved and negotiated this, and they only did it for 2 years. So it wasn't like this is the plan. This was a compromise for a short amount of time.
But it's a lot more. It's not about competitive balance, though. It's about money. The more playoff games they make, the more money everybody makes.
If you're an administrator, and you're trying to budget. You're trying to balance your budget for your athletic department or whatever.
Right.
You don't budget it based upon the most you can make. You have to budget it based upon the least you can make. So when you create a playoff system where the amount of money that you're going to bring in could vary 10, 20, 30 million dollars. That's actually not, from an administrative perspective, that's not a great deal. It's okay for now. They're going to get all their numbers on these games, the metrics. Some of them are like at-home games,
right?
But it's not as good as a conference tournament where all of that money is coming into the conference. It gets divided out equally. All your budgeters can fully figure out year to year how much they're going to have, what they're going to do with it. It's, I hate to say it, but it's the model of the NFL.
Right.
If the networks don't have, a magic 8-ball, they have to look at something that's working to a much higher degree and say, well, if we're going to try to make college football have a lot more value in terms of ratings and advertisements, we have to look at what works. So the conference tournament situation is what happens in the NFL. You have your 2 conference champions.
Right,
they go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, divisions and everything. Right.
what you don't want is you don't want arbitrary rankings. To most people, if you're not connected to a school, you're looking at college football the way it happens, the way it goes down, and you're saying, well, this is kind of a joke.
Right.
You could have the New York Giants in the NFL come at the end of the season, play the best football, and they had a 9-6 season or whatever, it was 9-7.
Well, that's the beauty of Cinderella, though. That's what
That
keeps
is.
college athletics going.
And
that very spirit.
And you can't question that. You can say they weren't the best team all season, but who gives a shit?
Nobody cares.
It matters at the end of the season.
Right.
The same thing. You're gonna have to help me out on this one. This is about Oregon. They had like a bad loss at the beginning of a season, and
Yeah,
it
we
kept
got killed. We got
kept
killed by
getting
Georgia.
held against you guys all year
Yeah.
long. Oh, this
Yep.
loss of the first game. It's like it's the first game.
And
I
it's
play
Georgia.
football,
Yeah,
And it's Georgia.
and you are not the same team at the end of the season as you are at
Right.
the beginning of the season. So the fact that like beginning of the season games are even held against the team, it's just silly. It's just because what happened when the colleges wanted these sports to become more known, like going way back, they had to get the media engaged to talk about it. So they gave them control over rankings of where to put the teams, how to talk about them. I mean, but it's very old and antiquated system. You don't need media people to rank these teams and have it matter. They can still do that for discussion or whatever, or maybe have the wild card games in the conference tournament. If there's like 5 division champions and 1 wild card, they can still have that wild card picked off of national rankings. That's fine. But if they really want to get the regular crowd involved with this, they need to get rid of any type of arbitrary nature to it and stuff like that. I think Oregon will be better off being out of the Pac-12 because if you start playing Eastern schools more, you're going to get a fair shake.
So,
And I think BYU knows this. You guys know it. You guys have been, whenever you schedule a lot to the east.
yep.
And you get a little bit fairer shape because BYU gets ranked for having a good season when most other schools from the G5s wouldn't even get a look.
That every year. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
So-
you know who started that, by the way, is Lavelle Edwards. Had a play anywhere, anytime mentality. That's why the Miami game, I don't know if you know this, but when we beat Miami in 1990, there was supposed to be a return trip to Miami the next year, and they canceled it. So what that tells you is they don't want to play those tough games at the beginning. Your point about Oregon and Utah even last year lost to Florida. The reason those games happen, Immaculate, and you know this, I'm not telling you anything, it's the strength of schedule argument, right? Because the Pac is sort of looked at as a weaker conference, even when you have top-heavy teams, Utah losing in the Rose Bowl 2 years in a row after winning a pretty up Pac-12 is not a good look. So that's why those games sort of get extended.
Yeah, I think that's where the 12-team conference can come into benefit.
Right.
Because for last year, for instance, when Tulane beat USC, towards the end of the season, Tulane was playing great football to where you'd kind of have that Cinderella type story in the college football playoff. You'd have Tulane moving on to the next round. But I think that's where the 12-team playoff can benefit teams that have a early loss in the season. If they lose one very beginning and then win out and they're playing some of the best football, they'll have the chance to show that in the 12-team playoff.
Here's a question from Rebel. By the way, Rebel's an Ole Miss fan. Thanks for joining, Rebel. I know you're a little out of your region, so really appreciate you joining us today and being here to introduce this Showtime crew. He has a statement: how unbalanced will conference realignment leave other schools in the dark? It is yet to be seen soon. So I think I understand that to mean, what are the teams that don't have access? What do you do with those? And how unbalanced will the top, in other words, the 3 conference, if we go P3, does the G team ever get in again?
Well, that I actually fully have an answer for that, but that would require that larger conversation of what is the national tournament actually going to become? What do they actually want to do with it? I think it's a champions only tournament because here's what you have to understand about the national tournament. Now, we have autonomy, the P5, and that controls almost everything athletic at this point in time. It does not control the national tournament. The entire FBS controls that. So every G5 school has a vote on how this goes. So you really can't cut them out. In my opinion, that's why we only got a 2-year agreement for the way it is now, because the G5s are like, we are not going to sign on for that being permanent.
Right.
That's not how it can be. I think that you might see that be a 6-game, 6-champion thing. And
Okay.
so you'd have your Big Ten, SEC teams probably always get the 2 buys just based upon ranking. I mean, you could say it's just on ranking, but I mean, odds are they're going to get the 2 buys. The Big 12 would probably get the easiest of the other champs, and you'd have that game start off. And so then you could have like an American Athletic Conference champion, you could have a Sun Belt champion, you could have a MAC champion. And so you get your share of Cinderellas. You even have a game with 2 Cinderellas against each other. Just find out who's the best Cinderella to go up against one of the big dogs. And that's following all of these conferences having their own conference tournament. And that's where these conferences can make money. And that's why I think this is what it is, because during that conference postseason, there's less content. You know, during the regular season, these big conferences just are loaded with content. There's no room for small conferences. But in the postseason, you're only having 1 or 2 games on a week. So there's a lot more content, or a lot more spots for content. So, you know, a G5 conference could actually get a deal with maybe a CBS or a NBC, or even if the CW wants to get in, just because there's less games for them to compete against. So that's why I think that, because not because of the P5 in this case, but because of the G5.
I think it goes to 16 teams. So you and I are going opposite directions.
I get what you're saying.
In 2026, I think they go to 16 teams. But I do appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, it just I think it from an administrative thing. Like if I was as a fan, I'd want what you're saying.
Yeah,
I would definitely want the 16 in the national and not the conference stuff. But I remember when Delaney retired as commissioner, the thing he said that he regretted the most was the loss of control over basketball.
Right.
And I just don't see them going in the same direction that they went with basketball, because in basketball, the power conferences, their conference tournaments are worth jack squat. They don't get anything for it.
It's basically seeding is the only thing that helps those tournaments.
And not even that, because you're taking basically the top half of your conference, putting them in that first round of there, and one of your schools that could be good in the tournament might lose first round because they don't really care. And so that's actually going to affect your seeding in the tournament. So it can hurt your seeding just as much as it helps.
There's so much money in March Madness, right, guys? I mean, I think we can all agree there's so much money there. What did Sankey say? He thought that it should even be more teams. I think he said he wanted it to go to 72 or 84, some ridiculous thing, so he could get his whole conference in the tournament, basically. And the Big Ten wants all their teams in the tournament, and it is more money. But I agree with you. What is that? That's 3 consecutive weekends, right? 2 of the weekends are for 4 days. That's a lot of content. You add another round, that's a month of tournaments. I think you'd have to do away with conference tournaments at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the conferences, I just don't see them doing it. They would, because of the highs and the lows. Like, do we get in 2 teams? Do we get in 4? Do we get in 6? Look at all this money we got with 6, but look how little we made with 2. It's hard to balance a budget off of that. That's a lot of money. Whereas if it's a conference tournament, they know how much they're making. They know how much to balance on it. And that's not fun talk for fans, right? No one wants to hear that. But these are the people making the decision. So if you're really kind of looking at this saying, where are we going? That's kind of whose shoes you have to step in to understand where it's going to go. But I think that's great, though, because if you were to go to like 25-team conferences, they can write these rules because of the autonomy rules.
Right.
They could have 5 divisions with 5 teams in a division.
Yeah.
Localized. These are the teams you play every single year. You can even load those games on the end of the season to where they actually matter more.
I think you brought that up the other day. I think 25 teams in 3 leagues is fine. You just who are you going to fill in with those last 12 spots? And we're going to end up with a lot of middling schools. Sorry, that's not nice. You're going to have a lot of Memphises and Tulanes, and maybe a Rice would sneak in depending on which conference it is. I don't know. Do we want to water it down that much? But
those are a lot of times the schools and teams that are hungry. I mean, if you look at a Memphis,
well, sure,
they're getting money out of the state for a $250 million improvement to their stadium. I mean,
well, they're getting money from FedEx.
That too, but it's also
Yeah.
from the Tennessee state legislature.
Right. That's the money BYU doesn't get.
And I say, man, if they're willing to go in like that, I say bring them in. I say,
Yeah.
let's see what they can do. And that's what I like about the Big 12 going forward is, as a Big 10 guy, I know what that's going to be. The SEC, I know what that's going to be. The Big 12, that's actually where kind of the excitement is like it's going to have this mixture from P5 on to G5, and when you see schools like Cincy coming in, when you see UCF, BYU, I don't think of these really as lesser programs. I think of them as programs that just weren't given a fair shake.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they
Well,
are.
it's the same with like San Diego State right now,
Yeah.
Boise State, even SMU as well. They've had great football seasons the last few years to where it's like I think they deserve a shot. And then Tulane, they had a great season last year. They were in the SEC forever ago, like way back.
Right.
To where I think, honestly, put them back in the SEC and see what they can do because you'd have that kind of in-state rivalry right away with LSU to where I think I'd be up for it to have these kind of 3-25 conferences.
Yeah, because the big – I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, let us start it now. Right now, we'll start a petition, Immaculate. Let's do it.
And, Ole Miss is playing Tulane first, second week of the season, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I honestly think
it
it's
goes.
already planned. I mean, there's been whisperings about the Big 12 is actually looking at the ACC. When they're looking at UConn,
Oh, sure.
they're looking at where the ESPN is headquartered.
Of course.
ESPN, if they're going to tear down the ACC, well, they've got their deal with the Big 12, which is the reason why I think that they actually went with the Big 12 and not the ACC, is because the Big 12 can help them more with the ACC
Right.
and is more willing to. You can see the Big 12 that has schools from the ACC, schools from the PAC, schools from the American, and it just has a very competitive conference. The hard part becomes in figuring out divisions
Right.
because it's going to be geographic, and that's where a school like San Diego State, to kind of take it back to your topic, it's a very rough position for them, and I understand why they're acting kind of funny because
Well, they're
There's-
desperate.
there's not much room for them. This is the West
Yeah.
Coast. We know this is the weakest watched area.
Right.
And when we get to divisions, you're going to be limited to the number of teams that you can have from out there. If we have 5-team divisions, you may only want to have one Western division as the Pac or as the Big 12. That's 5 schools.
Could you imagine a division, though? BYU, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, and San Diego State.
It's pretty good, but here's kind of what I think might happen on that is BYU, Utah, right there. That's people are going to grow to love that. I think that's
I
why
hope so.
like you guys having the show with Ute, I really like because that's the type of rivalry that has some we call good old fashioned hate.
Right. You're talking about the Holy War. Absolutely.
Yeah, like it's not in a bad way, but in a good way of like
Yeah.
Sure.
the guys on the field play higher. Like the same thing happens with Oregon State. It's why as an Iowa guy, I always wish for Iowa State to be in the Big Ten, is so that would mean more.
I've always wanted that. The Cy-Hawk Trophy is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's a
great
big deal in Iowa, but it could be a bigger deal.
Agreed.
And I don't think it's ever going to happen, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Well, thanks for joining, Immaculate.
No problem.
Well thought out as usual, and I really appreciate you joining my show today.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, and good luck with what you're getting started up here, guys. Hope you do well.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Immaculate. Bye-bye. There's a few comments here. I got to get this one. This is a super chat from Aztec Country. Let's talk about thanks for earlier. You know, he was on our show. We were talking to him. SDSU and BYU trophy, 15 shootout. What's that mean? Do you know what that means, Chase?
I don't know what he means. I was looking at it the whole time when I was like, I don't know what that means.
Okay. Did they used to have a trophy with SDSU?
I don't know if they ever actually had a trophy for it back in the Midwest.
I know it was a bitter rivalry. I mean, those games were always good.
Well, I'd say aside, of course, from Utah, and I'd say even over TCU. Obviously, TCU was always very, very good at football. But San Diego State BYU is definitely the rivalry of the Mountain West for BYU. If you take the Mountain West, especially with basketball, those last few years, but even with football, I mean, I remember the San Diego State games better, and that proves to me that it's rivalry. I remember the San Diego State games better than any other game when I was a kid watching BYU. So, I mean, I'm actually totally for having kind of starting a rivalry with San Diego State as kind of that conference rival, not your main rival, and that's totally okay. I think they could be, your big conference foe that we play every single year back and forth. I would love it. San Diego State's a cool school. So,
Chase, Ned, you want to add to that at all? Or
no, I completely agree. I mean, growing up, I'm not like a huge BYU fan to where I think that'd be awesome. I do remember like BYU San Diego State, I would always watch those basketball games. They were always entertaining. And I could always tell it like meant a lot more than other games to where I think it would be a good rivalry to have.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Mr. Monkey says, and Mr. Monkey, thanks for joining the show. I need to do a couple call outs. Mr. Monkey's joined, and I also had one from, where did it just go? Oh, geez, Cinnamon. I want to call out Cinnamon. And thanks again for your super chat, Aztec. Really, really appreciate it. So Mr. Monkey says, Fitz, do you guys know who Fitz is? I'll give you his contact if you don't. Okay, it's Tim Fitzgerald, and he's one of my social partners, and he did a video on the 4x4 pod scheduling for 16 teams in the Big 12. It's a fantastic video. He explains in very grainy detail how that would look, and I want to prop Fitz for putting that together. It took a lot of work. Let's see here. Any other comments before we go? This has been so awesome. One last comment from Devil Frog, who's the TCU guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Baylor BYU TCU rivalry. I think everybody is.
Yeah,
100%.
Especially after last season's BYU Baylor game. I think that trio will be a good kind of rivalry that will start up.
Yeah, I don't know. We can't call it the Holy War because that's already taken, but we need to come up with something. Maybe the Missionary War or something.
Yeah, it's got to be something like Christian-based, Baylor, BYU.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll get to work on that. Find us a rivalry name, and we'll start propping it out, okay? Anyway, well, guys, this has been fantastic. I know you said you might want to go 20 minutes. I kept you almost an hour and a half.
It's all right.
It's all right. It was fun. I
hope you had fun.
Talk college football for forever, so it was a good time.
Well, I want to shout you guys out. Everybody go to their show, Showtime CFB Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. Do you have a Facebook thing as well?
I've started a Facebook thing, but I haven't really done much work on it yet.
Okay.
My generation, we just don't use Facebook that much.
Right.
And
you guys
haven't
do
much
TikTok?
on there. We actually, once we start videoing, that was our plan to go to TikTok. So
you might have to help me with that because I don't know how to do.
That's
it.
okay. Yeah, we can help you get on Instagram. That's one thing that we're being younger. We know how to market on Instagram really well. We know how to grow an Instagram page. So.
Absolutely. Oh, Immaculate's giving us a name here at the end. The Trinity War.
The Trinity War. That's a good one.
Oh, I like that. Okay, go to Twitter right now, and you need to brand that, Immaculate, and we'll start selling it.
Trinity War, Battle for the Baptisms.
I need to write that down. Battle for Baptisms. Oh, my hell. Hang on a second. I got to write that down.
There's a lot of good ones. I mean, if you just sit down and think about it, you can probably get quite a few good ones.
Oh, my gosh. I gotta put Battle for Baptisms on there. That is amazing. Okay, for now on, I'm going to start selling that. I don't know what how I'm gonna.
What was that? Wasn't there a graphic last year after the BYU Baylor game? There was some graphic someone made that had a signature underneath it.
Oh, did it? All right. Yeah, you mean for somebody who coined it?
I don't remember what it was. I just remember seeing a picture I was on BYU Twitter somewhere. It was on BYU and Baylor Twitter. Like everyone kind of agreed with it, and it was something of a Christian art.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I saw
someone made a graphic on a T-shirt or something. I can't remember, but
okay, I'm owning it, and I'm gonna make T-shirts and mugs, and I'm gonna, somebody else already got 12 and on. Somebody else already got Truck Stop Conference, so I'm gonna steal Trinity War. Immaculate's been nice enough to give that to us. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining. Really, really appreciate it. I want to have everybody make sure you subscribe, follow. Scan this QR code with your phone and join up for the BYU NIL, which is Coup Connect. Sign up for $10, people. I know Mormon people are generally, cheap, but it's $10. Anybody can do that, and you get inside information on the team. I've already seen some stuff that was on recruiting, which was really cool. And follow these guys. and go out both Chases. Definitely give them a listen on their podcast. And is there anything else you guys want to say?
No, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Excited to do more shows. We'll have to do another one soon. So
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been awesome.
Absolutely, anytime. I'm glad to have you, and I want to shout out everybody who's watched today. Thanks for viewing, and I think I have a show tomorrow night, actually. If I remember, it's like 5 or 6 Eastern. Anyway, just watch my subscriptions on Twitter and on YouTube, and you'll find out when that show starts. It'll be with somebody from Texas Tech. We're starting to branch out into the Big 12. Couldn't be more excited, right, Chase? Couldn't be more excited about the Big 12.
heck yeah! Hey, Texas Tech's playing Oregon this year. It's a big game.
Right.
Oh, Texas Tech they're going to be really, really good. They can win the whole thing.
Yeah, heck of a season last year.
Dark horse for me, for sure.
If you get them out of conference, I would not want to play them, I think. Anyway, appreciate it, everybody. Thanks a lot. Have a great night. Peace out.